Welcome to She Talks Money, your sleek, smart, and stylish guide to building wealth with confidence. From real estate to passive income, we're serving strategies that turn ambition into assets. I'm your host, Jennifer Butcher, real estate investor and mortgage expert with 23 years of real-world experience. And I'm here to help you design a life that looks good, feels good, and pays well. Let's get to it. I am so excited to bring our guest to you today. She is one of my new favorite people. Lindsey Konchar is a financial therapist whose goal is to help you feel excited about money. Yes, you heard me right, excited. Money is more than just a math problem. There's always so much more to the equation. Merging behavioral therapy and financial education, which is brilliant, by the way, Lindsey helps you live your dream life. Welcome to the show, Lindsey.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited.
We are so excited to have you. We're going to cover a lot today.
Yeah.
So we are going to share with people how to understand your relationship with money, what is financial care, how to make financial goals and practice intentional spending, how to talk to your spouse about money without fighting.
Without fighting, that is key. Yep.
And last but not least, my most exciting, I'm so excited for this because I listened to your podcast and now I'm obsessed, how you used the Coast Fire method to retire your husband and partly retire yourself at the age, are you ready for this? Of 32 and 34 years old.
Yeah.
We're so excited.
We did it.
So let's start with now, and I don't mean to be so broad with this, but my experience with different types of therapy usually starts with peeling back some layers and looking at maybe not the so pretty stuff to get to the good stuff, right? So how do we go about understanding our relationship with money and then maybe shifting that perspective to improve the ways that we're working with money?
Yeah. This is always where I like to start because to your point, I think there's this emotional side of it that we really need to be aware of. And so when we can start thinking about this as we are truly in a relationship with money, just as you are in a relationship with your intimate partner, you're in a relationship with your kids, you have relationships with your friends, every single relationship a person has is, somewhere on the healthy side of things, or it's on the other side of the spectrum in that toxic range. That's maybe not where we want it to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I want everyone, all the listeners, to think of themselves in kind of this spectrum, like where might you fall? And I would say the toxic side of things are you avoiding money, right? Is it something that you're like a bill came and you're just sticking your head in the sand, you're not looking at it, you're shoving it to the side? That's probably a sign of more of a toxic or an unhealthy relationship with money. We also have people who fall in that category that are actually like too obsessed with money, or they're spending way too much time in the spreadsheet. I always give the example of if you have a friend who's like you just went on vacation, right? And you told me it was a fantastic vacation. You did not sit there and say, well, I got my flights for $100 and then we went to this dinner and it was pretty good, but it was like $200 and it was a little more expensive and right? We don't want that. We don't want to be so focused on the money. We want to actually live our lives and let the money be the vehicle to help us do so. And then on the other side of that spectrum, though, is that healthy relationship with money where you feel in control of it. You feel like you're on money dates, every so often, and you know where your money's going. You know where it's growing to. And that's really what I want us to start thinking about. And so if you want to shift yourself out of that toxic relationship and more into a healthy relationship, it really starts with a willingness to learn, right? And then it starts with financial self-care. And we can get into, all of that.
And how much do you find, because I'm thinking of my own stories right now, how much do you find that giving people, being compassionate, right? Like so much I think of that toxicity comes from the story we grew up with regarding
Right.
money. If you look at that situation, I mean, I remember my mom, her method of teaching me money was, this is back when they did like the check register, like line by line and showing me this was the paycheck going in, there's the bills that had to get paid, and this was what was left at the end of the day. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm never asking for another thing again because there wasn't a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then also another piece that stands out to me is being at the gas station my first year at college and literally having like $20 to my name and needing to use like 16, 17 of it to fill my gas tank. And literally in that spot, I told myself, I will never be in this position again.
Mm-hmm.
And I never was. But I'm guessing with the clients that you work with, a lot of their past or the way they grew up with money tells the story that they tell themselves.
Yes. So we actually call that your money story. And it is such an important place to start. So I am what's called a solutions focused brief therapist, which means I'm very forward thinking, I'm very goal oriented, action oriented, and we need to revisit the past at least momentarily, right? And so I'm not doing like deep inner child work. That can be phenomenal stuff, just not where my area of expertise is. But I do like to go there for a little while because we, to your point, need to understand the environment in which we grew up with money so we can understand how that's impacting us today. And so, like to your point, my parents fought about money all the
Mhm.
time. It was something that was definitely a huge source of contention between them. And I didn't want that in my relationship. I said, we might get divorced for something else, but that certainly will not be the thing that we get divorced over, right? And so my husband and I really early on in our relationship well before we were married, we were talking about money. We were doing those things. And so again, I think it's just really important for somebody to take time and analyze how they grew up around money because there is a study out of the University of Michigan that says our money habits are established by the time we are 10 years old. And so if we can just take a minute to like let that soak in, right?
Wow.
That's really, really young.
Wow.
And for the listeners out there who are like, oh my God, I have a 12-year-old and I've already ruined them. You did not. You did not, right? Because for yourself, for your kids, it doesn't matter. Habits can always be changed. And
Mhm.
this is the beautiful part about, the work that I do is there's a lot of hope because we can change our habits. And so don't freak out. It's okay.
So what is financial self-care and what are some things people can do consistently to start improving their financial situation?
Yeah. So with financial self care in particular has really become a bit of a buzzword, right? Everything is self care. You need this red light, it's self care. You need this massage, it's self care, which, yes, that all can be self care. But for me, how are you paying for that stuff? Because if you're going to go to a massage, if you're going to go get a facial, whatever it is, your form of self care, and you come home and you're going right back into financial stress, well, guess what? Your rates of tension are going to come right back. Your fatigue is going to come right back. Your sleeping or lack thereof is going to
Mhm.
be impacted, right? And so when we can actually get a handle on our finances, that is the truest form of self care because then you know how you can pay for that massage. You know how you can pay for that facial or that red light mask or whatever it is that you're wanting. And that's okay. I love spending money. I do it all the time and I do it well. Thank you very much, right? But I think it's important to understand like if you don't know how you're paying for that stuff, then you're actually just putting a band-aid on something and that's not what we want.
No. And it's really recognizing that you're doing it, right? Kinda
Mhm.
like, sometimes we eat to feel better about a
Yes,
situation.
I
I
money
I
is
spend I spent like, "I wanna feel better, I'm going shopping. I
you need
deserve
that
a
hit of
shopping
dopamine, man. And
experience."
I always tell people like spending money is a coping skill. Like
Mhm.
you are spending money oftentimes to cope and sometimes maladaptively. And other times you're like, I'm feeling real good. I want to ride this high and I'm going to
Yeah,
buy something to like keep making myself feel better. And so we just need to have self awareness in order to have self care, right?
fair enough. So, what are some simple steps or tips or tools that you can share with the audience for creating financial goals and practicing intentional spending?
Yes, everything I do comes back to intentionality, right? And so I have what's called an intentional spending planner, and it is quite literally 4 phases. And the first is setting those goals, right? And I have people do them in a short term, midterm, long term, lifetime situation. And so you're really zooming out. And I like to look at big picture stuff. Like you can't get so bogged down in the day to day line items and things. It's important for a while, but really, like, what do you see for yourself this year? What do you see for yourself in 5 years and 10 years and plus, right? And so setting those is really important. And then, laying out all of your debt, which can be really scary. But instead of sitting in that black box of shame by yourself, not knowing how much debt you're carrying, that's a really important step. And then we get to the intentional spending planner, which is really breaking down your fixed costs, your spending, how you're investing in post tax retirement accounts, and then your shame free spending, which is, again, my fave. But making sure that that shame free spending is being spent on things that are actually moving up your baseline level of happiness rather than mindlessly scrolling and finding your thumbs drifting to Amazon and clicking 3 buttons and having something enter your door in 48 hours, right? That is mindless spending. We really want to put more intentionality into what it is that we're buying to make sure, again, that baseline level of happiness is getting moved on up there.
Perfect. And before I ask the next question, this leads into, I don't want to forget, where can people get your planner?
Oh, it's on Etsy. So
Oh.
super fun. Yeah, easy to find. Or you can always just go to my Instagram. There's links in there as well. But
We'll
yes.
have everything linked in the show notes
Yes.
as well.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
so that leads me to, you've got this planner, and it's interesting because I listened to one of your podcasts, and this is like, and maybe it's not everybody, but it was so my husband and I to a T. One of us, him, just asks me once in a while, literally, how much money do we have? Like, that's how involved he is. And then I'm like the Excel spreadsheet queen, and I track everything and all of the things, right? So I would imagine that a lot of what you see, or the people that you talk to, is a lot of financial stress with spouses, or, in their relationship. So how do you how do you talk to a spouse without fighting about it, go into it, and then how do you get someone on the same page as you to kind of have a plan and stick to it?
Yeah. I would always start with the approach, right? If you're like finger pointing and like, you're never here with me, talk, right? Like that defense walls, boom, they're up. It's just going to ask for a recipe of disaster. So I think approaching the conversation with vulnerability or positivity, a little bit of both, can be really great. So like, hey, honey, I really want to see, this is where I see our future going, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. Can we schedule some time to do that, right? You're not asking him right then and there to drop what he's doing and do that. But actually, just as you were to go to a restaurant and you have a reservation and that's a date night, you are scheduling a money date. It is on the calendar. You both know what to expect. I like to have money dates with my husband in the living room after our kids are in bed. We know when, it's scheduled. I like we do a little blind taste test for his bourbon. It's his favorite. And so I pick something and he gets to guess what it is. And he might pour me a glass of wine or whatever. And then we really get into it. Now, for the couples who have not really talked about money or never even had a positive conversation around money, I actually don't think getting straight into the spreadsheet is the best way, right? I might want it to be the best way. You want it to be the best way for sure, but they are not going to be receptive to it. And so instead of that, I actually did this thing with my husband years ago now, but we had a really, really numbers heavy money date. And he was exhausted. He hates the numbers. He's like your husband. He's like, are we good? We're good? Great. All right, cool. I'm going to keep doing my life. Right.
Yeah.
And so he was just kind of like kaput after that. And I said, look, next month, I promise we won't even look at the numbers, but I am going to do something fun instead. And so I got a little creative and I said, okay, I am going to go to the gas station and get some of those like scratch offs. I do not do these, so I don't really know what I'm doing, but that's what I did. And I told him, I want you to start thinking about, if we won $10,000, if we won $100,000, and if we won $1 million, what would you do with that money? And so it was kind of fun. I gave him time to like think it over. I didn't want him to just be put on the spot, and he's a thinker. So he needs that processing time. And I did. I went and I got like $30 worth of scratch offs. The woman was so kind because I was so ignorant till I was like, help me, I don't know what I do. But before we scratched anything, I just said, like, what would you do? And we had a really beautiful conversation. And my husband, like this big hunter, like burly dude, he told me his very number one place that he wants to go in the world is Greece. I could not believe the beaches of Greece. I was like, never in a million years would I have guessed that about him. And we'd been together for like 8 years at this point. I was like, what? And it was so fun. Like, it was just super fun to have that conversation. Then we scratched off, our thingies. We won $0. But I'm like, at the end of the day, a $30 date night was way cheaper than us like going over to Billy's Sushi's and having some, rolls. And we felt way closer after. It was so exciting because it really laid this groundwork and this foundational thing for us to see, like, are we on the same ship? Are we sailing the same direction? Are we trying to go to the same destinations? I wouldn't have gone to Greece, but I guess we're going there. Fine. And, and so it was really fun for us to do that. And now we kind of know, like, to start out our bigger money dates with like either quarterly or annually, like, are we still going to Greece? Are we still doing these things? And so that's where I would actually have couples start, is have a really positive, fun conversation around money. And it has nothing to do with where your money is actually at. And then proceed from there.
I would love to hear from people if they're doing money dates. It's got to be a new thing.
I don't know.
I love it.
But I love it.
I love that idea. Wait till my husband finds out.
He's like, oh, crap. What did we do?
What did we do? What'd you get us into? So last couple of things. Again, I listened to your podcast and I'm so excited to hear about your Coast Fire method and what that's all about. But first, of course, I have to ask about real estate. And we met and I knew you just recently purchased a rental property
Yep.
and are actually in the works of potentially purchasing another one. So how do you feel as a financial therapist with different investments and whatnot? How does real estate fit into that? And maybe even particularly right now with the market being kind of scary or seeming like it's unaffordable, what would your recommendation be to people and where do you think that fits in?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's so interesting because actually I'm relatively new to real estate investing myself. So I've been an investor in index funds, that type of investing for years and years now. But I was always told like real estate is really risky and it's this and it's that. And so I just kind of was like, oh, I'm not going to touch that. I'm risk adverse. I don't want that. And the more now that I've had the bandwidth to learn about it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is actually fantastic. Elias, why did you not get me in this earlier? So mostly what it was is I don't have anybody in my life who is an active well, I didn't have anyone in
Mhm.
my life who is an active real estate investor. And so, that saying, it's like surround yourself with your 5 friends who are doing this, right? Whatever that is. Um, just nobody was doing it. And so I really started doing the deep dive on my own and
Mhm.
learning about all of that. And so whether or not you want to be like a stock market investor or you want to be a real estate investor, it's all about your mindset and understanding like who is in your corner, what education are you getting around it? Are you doing the right research? Are you talking to the right people? Are you networking the right way? And I'm a relationship person. So I'm like, I can index fund invest my whole life away, which is totally fine. I don't mind that. But like there's no relational things happening
Right.
there. For me, real estate investing is very relational, very fun, and I love learning. And so it's been a really fun ride for me. And so to the people who are, I don't know, new into investing in general, there's a lot of talk out there like it's gambling, it's gambling. And when you're running the numbers the right way, it doesn't have to be gambling, right? If you're buying individual stocks, yeah, that's way closer to gambling. But I don't do that. I buy big index funds and that is not gambling, right? And same with real estate. Like, sure, if you go and throw a dart and choose the first property that you see and you're not
Mhm.
running any numbers on it and you don't know what you can afford, then yeah, that's gambling. That's a problem. But if you've done the groundwork, you have an understanding about your relationship with your money, you have your expenses that you have under control, you know what that is, you know how to spend shame-free and in a way that's going to be really supportive of your lifestyle, you're saving well, right? Then you can look at what investing in real estate can do, how to run those numbers, talking to somebody like you to know what
Mhm.
they can afford. All of that is so it's really doing a lot of the preemptive work. And I will say it's not super like sexy necessarily, right? It's not flashy, it's not, but I think really having an understanding about what that can mean for you and how that can support the life that you want to live now and for later is it's absolutely incredible. I love
Well, I think it's sexy, so
it. She's like, give
but
me a
I do it for a
spreadsheet and
living.
it's hot.
Rental comparison. So, okay, I'm listening to your podcast, and one thing that just I connected with so much, and it made me feel good because I know people have asked me, and I loved, I shouldn't say preach, but I love to chat with younger generation now saying, okay, Jen, what is one thing that jump started you? What's one thing that helped us get to the level of success that we've had? And it was living below our means early on. We were fortunate to be successful, but we didn't buy that bigger house that we could have. And so many people did in the mortgage industry back, early on. We stayed put and we saved and we invested and we did those types of things. And we would not be where we are today had we not done that. So and I think that is a big part of the Coast Fire method and how I am jealous because I just got back from vacation. Let me tell you, I would like to go back soon. Retirement sounds really great to me right now. So, what did you do, and what is your advice to listeners who want to explore this method and retire early, set themselves up for success?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, you hit the nail on the head there with we have managed to keep our day-to-day expenses. So those fixed cost expenses is what I'm talking about here. Our housing, therefore our utility costs, right? The bigger the house, the higher utility
Mhm.
costs you're going to have. And so thinking about those phantom costs, I think can be really helpful. But, your grocery expenses, your transportation, what are your car payments? All of these things are really, really important to, if you can keep the dial turned way down on those and you can then bridge that gap into saving and investing more for your future, you're going to be way better off later on. And sure, I have friends who are in, much bigger homes than my husband and I choose to be in, but they're still working and they're going to be for the next 30 years. And my husband is 30, now just 35, and he's done.
Mhm.
And so I think if you were to ask him, would you rather have the bigger house or would you rather have time with your kids and be home forever and ever? He's going to go ahead and tell you that he would rather be out duck hunting than at work any day of the week, right? And so we did make some of those, what some might consider a sacrifice, but to us, like, we live in a 1,200-foot square house. It's small and we're very happy there. And so it's just kind of worked out that we've not been as maybe influenced and we've not let lifestyle creep really take over our finances. We've instead, again, kept those dials turned down on our really big things. One of those big things I said is our housing, right? We pay $1,600 a month for our mortgage. It is
Mhm.
like nothing, which is amazing. And we love that for us. And then, right, but we could upgrade that if we wanted, but that would
Mhm.
mean a whole different lifestyle for us.
Yep.
And right now we're not wanting to do that. It also means not paying a financial advisor the crazy AUM fees that they charge. And so being really aware of how you are investing and who you're paying to help you do that is really important. I had a financial advisor who was charging me 1.5% in my stock market investing portfolio. And I didn't know what that meant for a long time. And as soon as I realized that that would have meant that he was taking millions of dollars over the course of the 30, 40-year span of us investing, I said, no, thank you, goodbye, you're fired. And I can do this on my own for, and keeping that $2 million in my pocket when I'm 60 years old. So thank you and no thank you. And also, our cars, like we have paid off cars and they have bumps and bruises and a couple little dings. And they're wonderful. And we will keep them as long as they are willing to drive us around. And we're not upgrading those things every other year. And so I think really to exactly what you said, we are keeping our lifestyle costs way down. So then we have more time, we have more freedom, we have more flexibility. And that's our path. Now, that's not right for every single person, which is why I think it is really important to realize like, there's some people who would look at our house and be like, I don't want to live there. I would rather work 10 more years and live in a bigger, kitchen with an island. Great, do that. We are not, it's not the right way, it's the right way for us. And so I think really it comes down to tuning out the noise of what everyone else is doing, what everyone else says you should be doing, and figuring out what you want to do for you. And that's really how you do it.
And I think having those conversations in front of your kids, or at least some of them, we talk money dates. How about family money dates too? Because to your point, my husband didn't buy a new vehicle until his Chevy Tahoe had 430,000 miles on
Hot
it.
diggity.
Seriously.
That's
It's
amazing.
still at the cabin. It's still runs. So, but I think it's important having conversations with kids because something we didn't necessarily, well, my generation, I'm older, but my generation didn't deal with was social media and the constant. My son is constantly like, oh, I need this or I want this and I want this. And so we've had to have more and more conversations about, wait a minute, what are your goals? What's really important to you? And I saw on your blog a tip of wait 48 hours. Like,
Yeah.
and that's I'm using that with my kids now. They want something. I'm like, wait 48 hours and see if you want it. And this is how much you're going to have to pay for it. And it's amazing how 2 days later, they're like, oh yeah, that's not really important anymore. So
Mhm.
having those conversations with kids too, and sharing with them what are the bigger goals? Where do you want to be? What's important to you now, but also in the future can help them start to develop that healthy mindset
Oh, yeah.
around
Yeah.
money.
We do. So my kids are 2 and 4 right now. So they're just itty bitty babies. And we do family meetings. So anytime, anybody at any time can call a family meeting. They just have to go get the talking stick. We reconvene in the living room and we say, okay. And that can be as simple as like, what are we doing today? What's our plan? Right? That can be a family meeting. But it can be as big as before my husband retired, we sat down and I called a family meeting and I said, okay, here's the deal, guys. We are thinking about daddy having leave work. That means daddy's going to be home and a lot more. Then you're going to be seeing him a lot more. But it also means that we're not going to be going out to restaurants as much. And so, and my, 4-year-old was like, yay, daddy. Like she was so excited. She did not care at all that we would be going to restaurants a little less. And it was a really beautiful way to start encouraging both of them to understand that, like, you have a voice here. Your opinion matters on this, some of the stuff. And so we're actually moving to Costa Rica for a year. And before we made that decision, we wanted to introduce it to the kids and like show them videos of Costa Rica and say, like, we're thinking about moving here for a little while. What do you think about that? And that does mean that we're not going to see Grammy and Papa as much. And what does that mean for you? And, and so I mean, they know, we'll say, especially with big decisions, mommy and daddy are going to make the final choice, but we want to hear what you have to say about it. And it's really important to include kids in those decisions. Just as we were starting allowance with my 4-year-old, we were going to wait until she was 5, but she's very responsible. She's just I don't know, she's the greatest kid, I swear. But she was like, yeah, mommy, I'm ready. And I was like, okay, it's a big responsibility to have your own money. And this is how we're going to set that up. And that means some extra chores and opportunities to earn more. And, we just had the conversation, but we wanted her to weigh in. Like, it's a high possibility that she could have said, like, no, I'm good. Probably my son. My problem, like, when he's 4, he'll probably be like, no, I don't want that. I don't want to deal with it, and that's fine. So, but I want them to feel heard and supported. And I want also for her to practice purchasing decisions, because I want her to make a $50 mistake when she's 10 years old and not a $50,000 mistake when she's 30 years old. And so I think practicing some of that now can be, and modeling that can be a really good thing for them.
That's amazing. And this whole episode has been amazing. I guarantee everybody listening has taken at least one nugget from this. My encouragement is that you take it and you implement something right away. And that might just be going and signing up for Lindsey's newsletter. She has a great newsletter. Her blog and her podcast are phenomenal. We'll include the links in the show notes. But tremendous amount of resources for those looking for some financial assistance or guidance. And of course, you offer your services as well. So we'll include that as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Okay, you just leveled up again. If you're feeling that spark, don't let it fade. Use it. Take what you learned today and go make a money move. No matter how big or small, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share this with a fellow powerhouse who's ready to flip the script on their finances and lifestyle. This is She Talks Money, and we don't just talk, we act, build, and rise. See you next time, bosses.